You're listening to the Good Shepherd Catholic Radio Eucharistic Revival Podcast. I'm Lucian Leone, and we have a room full of panelists today. So we're going to start by I'm going to actually have everybody introduce themselves.
So, Robert Moore-Jumonville.
Patty Spencer.
Georgia Ludwig.
Father Tim MacDonald.
Great. Okay, so we've got 5 of us here, and the reason, I wanted to do this podcast is because, actually it started because I read an article in Faith magazine recently, and they talked about this article talked about the fact that here at Queen of the Miraculous Medal Parish, they've had one of the 2 perpetual adoration chapels going for like 30 years, or there might be one at Christ the King now as well, but and in any event, this is one of the oldest, longest adoration chapels in the Diocese of Lansing. And I thought, wow, since we're in the year of Eucharistic Revival, and I think what God has been talking to me about is, because I've been praying recently about, okay, God, what do you want to do in my life in terms of Eucharistic Revival? What I think He's telling me is, spend more time in adoration. And so I thought, you know what? It would be great to talk to some of these people that have been involved with this chapel for so long. So Patty, would you mind, because you were one of the founders of the chapel, right?
Yes.
Okay, so could you kind of go back, first tell a little bit about your story and kind of what happened, kind of what motivated you to get this chapel started?
Okay, yes, I'd be happy to. Well, it was probably 1992 when my husband and I went to a silent retreat here in town. And at the end during that retreat, they had the Eucharist in the chapel exposed during the retreat, and we were encouraged to go in there. Well, my husband and I loved going in there because this looked like something we saw when we were children.
Yeah. But
we hadn't seen much of this as adults. And so at the end of that retreat, it was Sunday afternoon. There were probably about 100 people there. And we were all walking to our cars in the parking lot. And I hear this voice saying, wait, just a minute, wait. And I continue on my way. And I get to my car and I open up the door and this lady said, wait, don't get in. So I turned around and here comes this lady running after me. And I said, oh, what can I help you with? And she said, well, I was the one that had set up the chapel with the Eucharist during the retreat. Did you go in there? Did you like it? And I said, oh yeah, my husband and I really enjoyed that. And we spent time there praying. And she said, well, how would you like to have perpetual adoration in your parish? And I said, well, I've never thought about it before. And she said, well, I'm going to give you my name and my phone number. And she said, you call me and I'm going to help you do it. And I said, okay. Got the piece of paper, got into the car. My husband said, what was that all about? And I said, I don't know. This lady asked me if I wanted perpetual adoration at our church. I'm not sure. And we left. I got home. I tacked that little piece of paper on the bulletin board in my kitchen and forgot about it. And it seemed like every time, after a period of time, it seemed like every time I walked past that bulletin board, I had this feeling of guilt. And I thought, this is strange. So I go and I clean off the bulletin board and I'd see that little piece of paper. And I go, oh yeah. And I'd tack it back up and go on about life. Well, it got to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. And so I went and took the paper off the board and called the lady. She said, I've been waiting for your phone call. And I said, okay, what do I do? So she told me that she was going to send me a video on the miracle at Lanciano. And that she gave me the name of this group of priests in Texas who who were, I guess their mission was to start perpetual adoration across the United States in various parishes. So she gave all of that to me. She sent it. She said, I'm sending it to you. And so it came, and my husband and I watched it. I'd never seen that, the Miracle at Lanciano. Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. I was rather blown away. We both were.
Can you kind of summarize it for those of us like me and our listeners who may not know much about it?
Okay. Well, Lanciano, there was I don't really know. Maybe you know more about it, Father, than I do, but I know that the miracle was the bleeding host, which is behind a, what do you call that receptacle?
The reliquary.
Okay, the reliquary. And it's been there for, I don't know.
Centuries.
Yeah.
Yeah, many Eucharistic miracles, and all of them lend themselves to Eucharistic adoration. But you're on a roll, Patty. Don't stop now.
Great. So you you saw the video.
Uh-huh. So then I said, okay, I need support. And at that time, there was a group of people from all the parishes, actually in Jackson, that were getting together for prayer sessions and doing things like the silent retreat. And so I said to my husband, okay, I'm going to call these people and I'm going to ask them to come. And we're going to talk about it. I'm going to show them the video, which I did. And they were all kind of blown away. So I said to them, what do you think? Do you think that we can support this? Do you think that this can actually happen? And I said, I need to have some support to go to the pastor. And these were people from all of the parishes in town. And so they said, oh, yes, we will support you. So then it was a matter of how do I approach the pastor? And I don't know if I should tell the story. You can fix it up. I don't know if I should tell it.
If it's really bad, we can take it out, but I'm sure it won't be.
So and anybody who knows Father John Kettleberger will appreciate this story. But so at that time in Ann Arbor, they were having what they call chocolate extravaganza, and the various restaurants and candy makers would have this event on like a Sunday afternoon, and you'd pay so much to go in, and you could just taste everything there.
Yeah.
And so I said to Bill, my husband, I said, let's take Father to the chocolate extravaganza. So we did. So on the way home...
You were setting him up?
Yeah. So on the way home, in the car, I leaned forward to talk to Father, and I said, Father, what do you think about having perpetual adoration at our
Was this before
parish?
or after he'd had his chocolate?
After he had the chocolate.
Good.
After. And he said, well, that would be nice, but he said, we're very busy. The priests are very busy.
All right, yeah.
And I said, well, this would be just a lay activity. Mm-hmm. That would be just us. And he said, well, I don't know. I got to think about it for a while, which he did. And he called me and he said, where would you see this happening? And I said, do we have any place at church? And he said, the only room I can give you is the candle room. And I said, we'll take it. That's great. And it was small.
How small?
Small.
Now, is the candle room where it currently is, or that's a different room? Okay.
It's a different room.
But over in the church building itself, a small room you have. Okay, good.
Did you touch both walls?
Just about. It was probably half the size of this office.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe about half the size of this office.
So basically like a big closet. In essence.
Yeah, a big closet.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so we came upstairs, because this used to be a convent. We came upstairs and we found the Prados in the attic. And we brought those down and we had those finished. And we found some chairs downstairs in the basement of the church. And we had...
so now at this point, how many people said that they would help? Because what I'm
Well, I
fascinated
had
by...
8 people.
Oh, you had how many? 8? Okay. So you had a small number of people who said they were willing to do this, but you really went ahead with building the chapel. Okay, keep going.
Okay. So, so I called up the priests in Texas, and I explained everything, and they said yes, they would come up. And so they came up in January of 1993. And actually, it was one priest that came, and he talked at every Mass, and he explained what perpetual adoration was, why a church or a parish might want that, the benefits and the beauty of having it, and all of this. But he says, he explained it's 24/7. We had little pieces of paper in each of the pews, and he asked if you're interested, sign up. And so we did that. And our start date was going to be the first Sunday of Advent, the first Sunday of Lent. I hope you can change that. Mm-hmm. The first Sunday of Lent. And
first Sunday of Lent?
Which would have been
We're good.
February 28th, 1993.
1993.
Yep. So we collected all these papers, and 3 of us took the time to come over to the office at the rectory here, the parish office, and we called everybody on there and scheduled whoever we could. We had holes because this was 24/7. Mm-hmm. But we tried to fill that with either ourselves or convincing somebody else to come. So we did it. We started out, and we were pretty good. All during Lent, people were coming, and they would even say, "Boy, I really liked being in the chapel. That was really
Now,
nice."
when you started, did you talk about it as just something we're going to do for Lent, or something?
No.
So you said this is something we're going to do for
Yes, we said
30 years.
Forever, right?
We said this is going to be a perpetual adoration chapel. Mm-hmm. So it will operate 24/7, 52 weeks out of the year. And the funny thing was that when Easter came along, the following week, the attendance dropped, and we all were, "Oh my gosh, what's happening?" Well, people forgot what perpetual meant. So we got on the phone, called everybody again, and say, "Hey, we're doing this forever." So that's how it got started.
Yeah.
Wow. I can't believe the audacity, or just, the sheer faith, or just, to think that you could keep that going perpetually. Wow, that's amazing.
Well, let me tell you, I spent a lot of time praying during all of that beginning, because I knew I couldn't get people. Yeah. It wasn't going to be me that was going to have somebody in front of the Blessed Sacrament 24/7. And I talked to, I always felt it was the Holy Spirit knocking on my heart to do this project. Yeah. And so I prayed all the time, and I said, "This is not for me, this is yours. You have to send me the people." Mm-hmm. And the Holy Spirit is still sending us people, right, Father?
Amen. Preach this.
That is so inspiring to hear, because, our pastor, you probably know Father Gordon, because he's a Jackson
He's a
guy.
native son of this parish.
A native son of this parish, played the organ in the Mass when he was, I think, in 4th or 5th. Anyway, wonderful parish and wonderful pastor. We love having him, and I know when I've kind of broached this subject with him once or twice. Kind of, I think, probably similar to you talking to. What was the name of the priest back then?
Father Kettleberger.
Father Kettleberger, and the sense I get from Father Gordon is that would be awesome, but he just doesn't know if people would be interested. And what you're so clear, and I think the reality is, because I work in marketing, so I spend my life trying to get people to come to things, and you can have the greatest speaker, the greatest whatever, and it can be harder than heck to get 20 people to come to some event. And I think about, okay, getting people to commit to forever, praying for an hour, is just an amazing thing. But you're so right. If God is in it, God's going to speak to their hearts, just like he spoke to your heart, and it's going to happen.
I think we have this default assumption that busyness and indifference are just impossible to get by. I mean, people will give up after a while. People will you can't, but this is just what's a beautiful, beautiful example to the contrary.
Well, great. And now I'd like to talk to you, Georgia, because you've been praying. Were you one of that first group?
I wasn't the 8 people, but I was one of the people in the pews filling out the little paper. I'm thinking, this is a good idea. And my husband, and I think I mentioned before, he's been gone now for 10 years. But he had gone to a different mass. So I'm sitting here filling out this, what would be a good time? And both of my boys were teenagers. I'm thinking, so I want to be here and I want to be there. So I'm thinking to myself, how about 1 o'clock in the morning? Because then if I can go to bed early, because at the time I was working and going to 6:45 Mass every morning, I'm thinking, if I go to 1 and if I get home at 2:30, I can get a couple hours sleep. This is all going through my mind. You can see how I think. It's disastrous. Anyway, so I fill it out. And then at one point, I have to tell you this though. So I came home and I told my husband about this beautiful thing that they're having. Yeah, he heard it at the other Mass and whatever. So we're going on. I said, what a beautiful thing. He says, that really is. That's really nice. I said, well, I signed up. Well, good, Georgia. Where are you going? I said, it's going to be 1 o'clock. And I got that far. He thought he was going to say p.m. I said a.m. He said, what? You're not going to be out at 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm thinking, I said, why not? Well, Georgia, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, I realize that, but if I'm going to get mugged, I would be in a good place. So he said, I'm not going to go there anymore. So anyway, and I think Patty had a group, a get-together with a number of people afterwards. And, we were getting our assignments and whatever. And at first, not when we were in that little closet. That was but it was really nice. It was very nice. Intimate. It was very, well, anyway, so my 1 o'clock in the morning started 30 years ago. And I did have at that time a partner. And I had him for probably close to 5 years. So if I had a situation where, I couldn't go or there was something going on, my husband was having issues and whatever with health and whatever, I could call him and say, hey, are you going to be there? I make sure somebody's there because it is perpetual.
Yep.
And you would be amazed at the number of people who do not understand what perpetual means. They always say it's forever. But anyway, so I could always count on him. Well, then he became ill and was no longer able to do it. So I have been probably doing it by myself at that hour. Well, for 25 years or so.
You're still in that hour now.
Oh, yes.
God bless you.
Wow.
Somebody better, I'll tell you, because sometimes I'm thinking, you're old, and how long is this going to go on? But anyway, it's become very much a part of my life. Mm-hmm. It's just, and especially, my husband had some very grave health issues toward the end of his life. He was on dialysis and all that kind of thing. But there was always, like sometimes I'd be at the hospital, whatever, but I could always find someone, hey, I've got to stay here. Somebody would cover for me because it is you're responsible for that. Mm-hmm. And I've had times when I've been there that maybe the next person wouldn't show up for some reason and you stay there. It's perpetual. Mm-hmm. You're like, come on, you've got this, you stay. And some people are still doing that. And I know one thing that I think is absolutely amazing is that Patty's wonderful son Nick follows me at the 2 o'clock hour. He is absolutely loyal, wonderful, and we have a quick little chit chat, just God bless you.
He is his mother's son. Yeah.
and have a good week and all that. And he's just, but I think that's ironic.
That you become friends.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Oh, definitely. Mm-hmm. And I see him in church and his family and whatever. And it's been a really good thing for me. And it's changed a lot of things in my life, because I always feel like, I'm definitely with God.
Yeah.
And then the other ironic thing for me is that I also do the 5 o'clock holy hour that we have on Wednesday nights, and then the Mass that's following. And so it just so happens, and I say, Jesus, this is double duty because it's 1 o'clock on Wednesday morning, and then it's 5 o'clock. And I said, so listen to me. I'm being good.
You've earned some extra grace there. Huh?
Please. No, I feel like I almost wish it were 2 different times because then it would, whatever. But it's been a wonderful experience for me, and I've always felt other things have happened too. It's kind of like going through my husband's death and all the problems that we all have in our lives various times and whatever. But I've always been able to go to daily mass. I've been doing that for a very long time. And that if for some reason I don't go, there's this kind of like feeling like something's wrong. Mm-hmm. I didn't go and receive the Eucharist.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is that it would probably be impossible for you. I mean, like if you stopped right now, you'd feel this.
Oh, definitely.
This sense of
loss.
Oh, I would. Mm-hmm. And so as long as God has given me the strength to get there, because sometimes that's ebbing, as far as that's concerned. But I think it's like now today. I did not go to 6:45 Mass because I
noticed, Georgia.
I know. I bet everybody said, "Where is she?"
We were very concerned.
Well, I was at St. Mary's at 12:05, but for years when I was working, I was different jobs. I was just in all kinds of stuff, the Chamber of Commerce and all that type of thing. But I always went to 6:45 Mass.
Yeah.
Well, then when I retired, it wasn't like I had forgotten that Mass. It's just that I had more options. So I go to Mass every day, but on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I hit the 12:05 at St. Mary's and bring those folks in. You know what I mean? 2, I know, are now at Queens. So
in the chapel?
No, but
we're advertising for the chapel. If I get accused in this podcast of parish poaching,
I take full responsibilities because both of these people have told me how many opportunities there are.
Well, there we are.
For all different, like we've got this thing for the kids.
Stay away from the St. John's people.
That's right.
Well,
no poaching. No poaching, Georgia.
There's a couple of St. John's people that were 12:05 Mass at St. Mary's. If that, it's a.
We are the Roman Catholics of Jackson.
Yes,
that's right.
That's true.
Amen.
Only those
Get your
2
ticket
days.
punched in every parish.
It is so nice that we do have many options for Mass.
It's true.
Yes,
in this community.
To me, that was one of the most striking things because I live in East Lansing and I've been there forever. But when I started working here and I saw that there in Jackson, which is a smaller city than Lansing and East Lansing, you had 2 Eucharistic Adoration Chapels, and we have one at the Immaculate Heart of Mary, which I can confess I don't ever go to. But anyway, I thought this is amazing that Jackson has two chapels, these 3 parishes, and what's so cool, I think, is how well you all work together. I mean, working in this, working with the schools and the principal and the pastors, kind of from the sense of the schools, just seeing that there really is this strong sense of community among the parishes that I just think is incredibly powerful and really, really positive. Well, Father Tim,
yes,
you've been the pastor now. Because I read this in Faith Magazine, at 2 parishes.
Let's trust but verify.
Yes, if it's in Faith Magazine, it must be true.
Yes.
2 parishes with a perpetual chapel.
It is interesting, this diocese, when I became a priest 23 years ago, had 94 parishes. Now we have 72. So that shows the decline. I've closed a Catholic school in this diocese and lived to tell about it. So we're in the Rust Belt. We're in an age of decline. How rare it is to see people starting things when everything else is retracting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what I love about these people, both at Holy Redeemer of Burton, where they have a thriving chapel. They just remodeled it, refurbished it, and the bishop came to dedicate it and reopen it. And here at Queens is people that are going on mission. I mean, that's putting out in the deep water and not making sure you have enough net. When you start with 8 people to cover 168 hours a week, 8,760 hours in a year until Jesus comes again, that's faith. So we honor that faith. If they want to be there, then I want to spend money to keep them there and to make the chapel beautiful and great. And for me here at Queens, It's especially poignant that where the chapel is now is not that little room, which actually has become a candle room again, and sacramental wine. But it's built into the very foundations of the church.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I look at what's happening in the chapel as the foundation of everything that's going on here. Any success we have is because there are people in there in the dark of night, in the middle of the night, every night. And it's very edifying.
Yep.
It doesn't keep me awake at night. I still take my rest, but it's very gratifying to know as I'm shutting out the light, we're passing the baton because somebody's over there keeping company with Jesus.
Yeah.
And he is glorified and they are blessed. And the whole parish is blessed. Even those that never set foot in that chapel, they're blessed because it's there and because there's someone in there with Jesus.
Well, Father, what you're saying, I think, is so important because as those of us who are, practicing faithful Catholics think about Eucharistic revival, and it's easy to say, I believe that is the real presence, and I believe all that, so, I'm good here. I think what God, as I mentioned kind of at the beginning, what God has been saying to me is, just like you had said, kind of going into the deep. It's like, okay, are you willing to go deeper? And a big part of going deeper, I think, for those of us who believe and really want to live our faith in a vibrant, real way, is Eucharistic adoration. I mean, it is I was just talking recently with G.B. Richmond, who's now in South Haven, and we were talking, and he has a deep love for Eucharistic adoration and really misses the fact that there were 2 chapels here in Jackson, and there is none in South Haven. But when we were talking about that, and he said, what I've come to appreciate is I kind of do from, I think, 2 to 4. He said when he did it from like 2 to 4 a.m. or I think one of the I think it was either here at Queens or at St. John's. And he said, I always found it took me an hour to just kind of decompress and kind of empty my mind. And the second hour was when I really felt I was listening to God. And I thought that was very inspiring and convicting to me because there was a while I lived in, because of my job, I had a condo in St. Joseph's, Michigan, and they actually it's a tiny parish, but they have a Eucharistic a perpetual adoration chapel. And when I was there, I was signed up. I did like the Tuesday morning 1 a.m. slot. And I thought it was the best prayer time I've had in my life. And because it was just me and God. And there was something so powerful. I mean, not that there's nothing wrong with praying, at a normal time. But to me, there was something so powerful about getting up, in the middle of the night and going and praying and just saying, and kind of, going in there and being by myself. And sometimes somebody else would be with me, sometimes not. But giving ourselves that quiet time is so important because, as Cardinal Sarah says in his book about silence, I think the thing about Eucharistic adoration that I think I would love to kind of get your thoughts on is we live in a society of constant distraction, noise all the time. And I think one of the beauties of Eucharistic adoration is the idea that, I actually think learning even not to have a list of prayers you're doing is to just learn, okay, I can just sit here and talk to God and listen to God and see what he's saying to me, and I can bring my needs to him. I think there's something incredibly powerful in that many of us, because society just doesn't value that, our lives are so filled with distraction and noise. I think Eucharistic adoration is the absolute best remedy we could possibly have.
Amen to that.
And that's why people love, once they start going to the chapel, they love it. They look forward to it because it's the hour of peace that they can't get any other time during the week.
Yeah.
And that's one reason why I really enjoy the fact, I wish that more people would go to the chapel and spend that hour. But I like it that they're not spending it in my hour. Now that's the selfishness coming in, but it's just me and God.
Yeah.
And we hear that a lot from the people that are on nights. They say, I don't really want a partner. You know, when I go on vacation, you know, I'll find a sub for me, but I want to be alone with God.
Yeah.
And we hear that particularly from the night people.
Yep.
I wouldn't, as a 4-year Catholic, 4-year-old Catholic, I wouldn't have any idea what anything this was about necessarily, except that at Lumen it was monthly that we did adoration for an hour and for theology classes. So I had all 6 classes in there for an hour. So I got to, over these last 2 years, I got to experience adoration. And the connection for me is coming back to what you were saying about noise and distraction, Lucian. I taught contemplation, essentially, contemplative prayer for probably 20 years or so at the college level and at the master's level. And you know, the trying to introduce that to people, they're always like, well, what do you say to God, or what do you do? I mean, and there's this kind of fear of, I think, our own emptiness of like, and I think what you said that GB said is the first hour or the first process of this is just letting go, just sort of detoxing, just sort of like letting it all drain out. And then at that point, then you're just free to be in the presence of God. And that's amazing because you don't, I mean, you can say something or he can say something, but you don't even have to because it's just the beauty of being, like say being with a spouse that you've known for 20 years. You're just there together. And it's wonderful.
I think sometimes too, though, I will have if I'm reading, because I usually have a book that I'm reading too, and maybe I'll have, not necessarily in the chapel, but if I'm reading at home or whatever, and sometimes I think, well, I'm really enjoying this, so I will take the book. And then as I'm reading maybe a paragraph, maybe a phrase, even a sentence, I say, that makes sense now. I mean, it's just kind of like, it is a conversation, a personal conversation with Jesus. And sometimes, and when I hear it, sometimes, Father, you are so good at giving statistics about the number of Catholics who do not believe in the divine presence. That disturbs me. And it gets me, but then I have to remember, too, everything is definitely in God's hands. So all I can do is pray. And that's the other thing, when I'm in the chapel, I pray that there are more people that recognize Jesus and in the divine presence. I mean, that's just something that I pray for.
Well, is there anything before we conclude? Any kind of last thoughts or comments people wanted to that we maybe didn't talk about yet?
Yes.
Great.
It's very interesting what takes place in the chapel. I know there's a lot of men who discern their vocations by spending time in the chapel and becoming priests or deacons. The same thing with the ladies going into, the convent. I've seen it myself, and I've talked to people that said, "Oh yeah, my son spent a lot of time in the chapel discerning his vocation." The other thing that I have heard, interesting stories, people that have gotten engaged in the chapel. They've dedicated their life, or they've expressed their love in front of the Blessed Sacrament and become engaged. People that stop there on their way home from the hospital after having a baby and giving thanks to God. There's a lot of interesting things that happen in the chapel.
Little miracles.
Georgia, I was interested just to ask you, over 25 years, 30 years, just personally, if you see like stages or phases or like, what has deepened or what, if they're almost in a sense like, would there be, you'd say like, if you were going to do this for 25 years, you might expect some of these lessons or something like that. Some of these,
Well, I don't know if they were actually, I can't really pinpoint a particular time, but I do know that many of the times in my life, and since that, 25 years, let's say, there have been many ups and downs, as there are in a lot of people's lives. But I always was able to, sometimes, and I will admit this, sometimes I was just so tired. I mean, I just, I'd been up and doing this and doing that. But then I always made my way And I found peace doing that. And especially, the last 10 years, my husband's been gone, but he was, he was in the hospital a lot. And the number of times that I called 911, we were on a first name basis with the EMTs. Oh, Jerry did this because he was a brittle diabetic, diagnosed when he was 33. So we had a lot of time, a lot of critical moments and whatever. But when I went to adoration, I felt, God, I'm having a real struggle with this, but I feel your presence. I feel you with me. Just get me through it. Yeah. And he has. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people have gotten a number of very, very difficult situations that they are in, and they call me sometimes and tell me, Georgia, would you get, I have a prayer list, I think it's quite long. People say, do you write it down? I said, no, because I have categories. But it takes me a while to get through that category. And then I bring all of those things and I bring them, to the Eucharistic Adoration. And it just, it gives me peace. And to know that there is a God, and to let me know, even though you think you are, Georgia, you are not in charge. So, accept it.
And I think that Eucharistic adoration has an effect on the whole community. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily that people, everybody's going there, but because it is so faith-filled and so much love, that I feel that it's in the community. Yep. That the community benefits from having our Lord there in the chapel.
Changing Catholic culture.
Yeah. Well, and hopefully changing cultural Catholics. I mean, that's one of the challenges we face right now, that for so many of our families out there, it's a challenge to even get them into Mass, to get them to set foot on our premises for anything, let alone to get them to take some hour they were not obligated to by canon law or their bishop, and obligate themselves to it willingly and freely, and keep that in the middle of the night for years on end. Yep. I think this is what will buck the trend. Sadly, podcasts like this, we're often preaching to the choir, we're listened to by the choir. If only we could get this valuable information about this, the treasure buried in a field that is the Eucharist, into the hands of those who do not know Him, those who have forgotten, those who have fallen asleep in the gospel. This can change their lives and really just become their anchor. So many people feel adrift and shiftless on the stormy seas of life, but that's because they don't realize the anchor that's been given to us, that is the source and summit of this whole thing, the Eucharist. Amen. And the chapel, it's built on faith, and it exists now because of the faith of these ladies and others like them who keep doing it. And God bless you. God bless you for your dedication and your faithfulness. And Jesus is faithful to those who are faithful to Him. It's a real blessing. Patty, did you get engaged down there? No.
Oh, just make it up.
No,
yeah.
She would have if it would have been around back then.
No, but I think that it has had an influence on my kids, because all of my kids were adults when we were starting the chapel. And so, like my son Nick, who comes after Georgia, he now has an hour of his own. My daughter lives in Grand Rapids. She has an hour of her own up there in their parish.
What parish is she at in Grand Rapids?
She's in Immaculate Heart of Mary.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's just a lot of blessings that come because we have it.
Well, and I think what you're all kind of getting to is, I think this kind of recommendation that I know God is putting on my heart, for those of us who maybe, obviously, Father, we always want Catholics going to Mass on Sunday, but if you're a Sunday, you're doing that. It's like if you're wanting to make the next step, it's like, what can I do in my life if I feel like I'm just not growing as a
give this a try.
Give this a shot. I mean, we've got these two wonderful chapels here. So if people just want to stop in and experience it, do they need to kind of contact somebody first to get a code, or what do they need to do?
No, there is a doorbell. We do have a camera so we can see who's outside. Great. When we're standing inside. And so there is a doorbell. They can ring the doorbell, and they can be let in that way. And usually people would say, I just want to come and make a visit. Yeah. And they can do that.
Beautiful. So that would be my closing encouragement. If you have not been doing this and you want to just try it for an hour or maybe 2 some night or day, whatever, just to spend some time. You could just come into Queens, or I know they've got one over at the St. Joseph's Oratory, but it really, I think, can over time really change your life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we hope those folks out there listening would understand, not everyone goes perpetual their first visit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, we want to go into the deep water, but if you have to put on some water wings and start in the shallows and just see what it's like.
Yeah.
Do I feel a good vibe in here?
Yep.
Just stop by and keep it simple. So many people feel, well, I couldn't spend an hour with Jesus. What would I say to him? But one of my favorite definitions of prayer came from St. John Vianney, patron of parish priests, pastor of St. Sixtus V in Ars, France, for 35 years in the middle of the 19th century. And it was a farming parish, and a wife came to him complaining that her husband was always in the church. She thought he should be in the fields taking care of business. And so she wanted John Vianney to go in there and get the farmer Champignon out of that pew and back into the fields. And so over a period of time, Father John Vianney just witnessed the farmer Champignon just sitting in the pew. To others, it might look like he's just biding time, wasting time, doing nothing. But then John Vianney realized he's not just here to stay out of his work. He's not just here to stay away from his farm. There's something going on there. This man is praying. So in awe, John Vianney asked the farmer Champignon, what happens when you pray? And I love this answer with regard to the tabernacle. I look at him, he looks at me. And it was just that simple. Sometimes we think we have to be eloquent and poetic. We can't even scratch the surface at coming to the poetry of God's love for us in the Eucharist. All we have to do is just show up. He'll do the rest. And so we don't want people to stay away because they feel they don't have the right words or the right prayers or enough faith. If they believe there's something besides bread inside that monstrance, they have enough faith to be there. And that's what will keep drawing them back. So yes, definitely we want to give that encouragement, whether it's St. Joe's or here or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Or if you're in a parish that doesn't have adoration, that's my challenge to you. Ask your pastor why. When I was, before I was a priest, I asked a priest that once, why we never had adoration in our parish, because I looked everywhere else and they had at least some and we had none. My thanks was that I got yelled at and reprimanded. But it made me feel that when I became a priest, I would never be the one that was depriving people of that access.
Yep.
I feel that very strongly about daily mass. Other parishes aren't having daily mass very often. We have it here 7 days a week. There's not a single feast day on the church's calendar that can't be celebrated here. And that's something that I think the chapel makes possible. If we put in the hours down there, we will have more people showing up for their hour in church.
Amen, Father. Well, thank you all for being our guests on this segment.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
thank you. It's been great. So you've been listening to the Good Shepherd Catholic Radio Eucharistic Revival Podcast. Thanks for listening.